Welcome into the Trevor Staub Show, episode number 16. Today we have a very special guest. We've got the disc golf guy, Terry Miller. Terry's going to join us to talk all about Pro Tour commentary. It's going to be great. We're finally going to really dig into the subject that we talk so much about on the podcast, grip locked especially. And we've got an actual commentator from the Pro Tour to discuss it with, so you're not going to want to miss this one. Let's hop right into it. All right, we're welcoming into the show now our special guest for today's episode. We have the disc golf guy, Terry Miller. Terry, thank you so much for joining the show.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Just definitely wanted to have you on, have another media personality, definitely somebody who's been in the game a lot longer than I have to talk to. But a lot of people know you now, and we'll get to this a little later, as a commentator and broadcaster for the Disc Golf Pro Tour. But people that are newer to the sport, which is a lot of our listeners, might not really know, where you kind of started out as, how the whole disc golf guy mantra really came into play. So kind of start off and just give us a summary of your start in disc golf, even from the very beginning, and then kind of how you moved into the disc golf guy.
Yeah, and I don't know how many hours you have, so I'll give you the abridged. I'll give you the abridged version.
For sure.
We'll start. I'm 43. I found the game when I was somewhere right around 13, maybe 14, somewhere in that neighborhood. In fact, I just found it as throwing regular frisbees into the grocery baskets, just like when you go pick up only a couple items. Well,
oh yeah,
those were scattered throughout my camp, and they had a course set up, and so I was throwing regular frisbees into those, and I won that competition at camp. I loved it. And then I found a post course, an object course, which was really frustrating, and I hated that. And then a day or two later, I found my first basket course. This is all in Appleton, Wisconsin, which is about a half hour south of where the Green Bay Packers play, to put that on the map. And from there, I just fell in love, played throughout high school, started running tournaments when I went to college, started a club, started, everything I could do to promote disc golf when I was in college. And then right after college, I found that I did get a 9-to-5, a corporate job, using my IT and communication degrees. And then I up and quit that one day, which was almost 20 years ago now.
Wow.
And I just started I continued doing what I was already doing, which was running leagues, running tournaments, designing courses, of which I've designed about 30 or so now, and just promoting disc golf. And then finally, in 2010, I read my first ever book by Gary Vaynerchuk, which was his first book, Crush It. So some of you guys know Gary, some of you don't, or know what he's doing now. But in 2010, he basically said, hey, take your passions and your dreams, and there's a way to turn them into a career. And that's when I was like, well, clearly I'm all in on disc golf. And then I started doing some media, started with a little $99 flip cam. Which many people don't even know what that is because it's so
it's old school.
Yep. In this very room, I'm in my office right now where I recorded my first ever video blog. And then from the blogging, it turned into, I didn't know what direction it was going to go, and that turned into eventually some coverage, and then shot-by-shot coverage, and then starting a live disc golf company with Smashbox, and then podcasting and review shows, and you name it. It's now gone a million directions, but that's kind of the down and dirty all along. For quite a few of those years, I was playing competitively, but by 2010, my career very much sharply took a turn into the media world.
Yeah, and that I wanted to kind of get into that because a lot of people don't realize, because you've been at the center of a lot of the media, especially since, disc golf. And it's funny because I was kind of talking to Scott Stokely about this a few weeks ago, where like a lot of disc golf isn't really on the map because the media presence of disc golf didn't kick in. I mean, even coverage didn't become big until 2011, 2012, around there. So there's so much of disc golf history that doesn't really exist. But so a lot of people don't realize that at your height in 2007, you were a 995 rated player. Certainly a presence competitively, because people don't realize as well that 995 in 2007 was a very big deal. We didn't have 1060 rated players back then. So what kind of made you take that turn in your playing career to decide, like, was there ever a thought that, as you were getting better, were you thinking you could pivot towards a professional touring career, or was media really always where you wanted to land? And without trying to sound too cocky, I've always enjoyed the fact that I was decent without
practicing. And so and that was actually a double-edged sword, though, because I wouldn't go out and practice because I was like, I could maybe win this B tier here locally. But at the same time, I didn't really have the drive to go out. And Barry Schultz was here in Wisconsin. Chris Herron and a few other top-level pros were here. And I knew what touring life looked like for Barry Schultz. And it was miserable. It was, and not miserable financially. In terms of having fun and enjoying the world, they very much did that. But touring life, even the best players in the world, I mean, some players are now making more in 2 weekends than an entire year's worth of touring. And so none of that interested me. And I was very content just being a local or a regional pro and not putting in much effort into that. So I was blessed in that sense. But yeah, it was 2010, like I said, when I did my first ever vlog, and I was still playing a little. I think I cashed at the 2011 Worlds still, but shortly after that, by that time, I finally took my first trip around 2013 where I didn't take my disc golf bag, and that was the first time I'd ever been on a plane and didn't bring a disc golf bag because that was just unheard of. And that's when I was like, this is it. I'm no longer a disc golfer. I'm a media guy.
Well, yeah, and you did choose, obviously, you chose the right time to make that decision. I mean, we'll never know if, we could have had 2015 world champion Terry Miller, but you got in there early and certainly became like a big presence in media and got the share of the market early on that has kept you there so long. One thing I was kind of curious about was you mentioned having that 9 to 5 and doing some using your IT and communications degree, but did anything you did in your 9 to 5 life kind of align with what you're doing now as far as more of the I'm certainly communications, the degree helped, but did you do anything in your previous job that kind of synced up skill-wise with what you're doing now, or is it all kind of something you've learned on the go?
Yeah, absolutely not. None of my previous life or career led me into this. And I always tell the story that one of the many jobs, I worked really hard in college, and one of the many jobs that I had was working in the journalism and mass communications department. I was really just like an office boy. I worked in a couple computer labs and various places, but I worked in the journalism and mass communications department and took 0 of the classes. Which now I regret or wish I would have had a little of that formal training in terms of any of the video stuff, interviewing, all of those types of things. So, no, I wouldn't say. I worked at Kohl's Corporate, and depending where you are in the country, that's a relatively large department store chain, and the world headquarters are about 15 minutes from where I live. And so, when you're trying to apply for a credit card, it was the systems that I helped oversee that would say, oh, hey, this guy's a good bet, and here's what the limit should be on his credit card. So, no, unfortunately, none of those skills, other than having a basic knowledge of computers, none of those skills really transferred over whatsoever.
Yeah, well, then, I mean, in that case, it's certainly you definitely perfected your craft over the years because, now, and we'll kind of move into it, but obviously, you've become one of the faces of the broadcast for the, biggest platform we have now for the sport, being the live disc golf and the Disc Golf Pro Tour. How did the Pro Tour first approach you? Like, where did you get started with the Pro Tour before getting into this all those years back?
Yeah, it was around 2014 when my best friend and I, Johnny V, we decided, hey, live disc golf coverage exists, and Disc Golf Planet, who are some good friends of ours, Terry Roddy, John Dusler, had really been trying to work on it, and we saw that there was a lot of opportunities, not in terms of covering golf, but we just felt like they were spending a lot of money to make it happen. And it was right around that time that Google and YouTube had said, hey, you can stream to our platform for free. You might have a 2 or a 4 hour limit, but you can stream to our platform for free, which is something we used to have to pay for. And so Johnny and I mean, for lack of a better phrase, we just felt we could build a better mousetrap. We could do it what they were doing, but we thought we could do it more efficiently. And so 2014 is when we got our start, and some newer technology had come along that was cheaper, and we thought we could do it, much lower budget. And then it was 2015. Well, we got our feet under us in 2014, and then 2015 we were still working on stuff. And then it was at that point Steve Dodge reached out, who I'd already worked with for some post-production, and he said, I want to start a tour. Here's what it looks like. I got the presentation of what the Pro Tour was going to look like years before it even happened. And he said, we want to commit to live disc golf. One thing about this tour is that every event we want to have it live. And in that first year, there was 5 events, and he said, we want to commit to Smashbox TV, me and Johnny, to be the live backbone of the Disc Golf Pro Tour. And that's how the entire relationship got started.
Yeah, well, and it's crazy. Like back then, live disc golf was just radical idea, really, and obviously it was so difficult to get people to accept it. And now I think that people are really starting to get on board and catching on and realizing, especially with as far as social media has come and the you can hop on your Twitter timeline and almost watch along with other people, and that's been huge. Our podcasts have always been major proponents of watching live disc golf and supporting that product because we realize that it is in some way going to be a big part of the future of the sport. But I thought it'd be interesting to ask you, kind of as somebody who still is operating a YouTube channel that creates post-produced content and working under the Pro Tour as part of one of the major employees working towards that live product as a commentator. Where do you kind of see those two kind of working into disc golf coverage in the future? How does that kind of look in your eye?
I feel like they're going to continue to coexist. There's a lot of people that love the condensed version. Maybe it's because of the commentators or the additional graphics and camera work or whatever. Post-production will always continue to exist. I'd like my channel to still film it and host it. But I also think live's going to continue to get better, and that gap is going to continue to shrink. People have I've heard every single negative thing that could be said about live disc golf. I've heard it all throughout these last 8 years. And some of them have been dead on, and a lot of them I keep thinking in the back of my head, that's money, that's technology. And as soon as the money and the technology catch up, then we're going to be able to shrink that gap of what post looks like versus what live looks like. And so, I think you're going to continue to have both. There's, right now I don't watch a lot of other professional sports, but once in a while I'll click on the 5-minute recap or the 10-minute recap of, of a baseball game or a basketball game or whatever. So I think they'll continue to coexist. We have to remember live disc golf is also still very, very expensive to make happen, especially if you want to do it well. And that means not every tournament can have it. And I think we're a long way off from sitting on your couch and being like, hey, which one of these 10 A-tiers do I want to watch today?
Right.
We're a long ways from that. So then insert post-production right into that conversation as a viable alternative.
Definitely. And I like that you mentioned all the criticism that's kind of come in, and some of it being valid and so much of it being, well, it's just a matter of time and money. What do you feel like as far as just the live broadcast product? We'll get more into some of the stuff that you do with the commentary later, but just with the broadcast product, what do you feel that some of the criticism you receive that maybe people don't have the full picture of or quite the right understanding, like some of the misconceptions that are kind of formed about the broadcast?
First and foremost, I feel like we're eliminating one of the first ones, which was, hey, we don't want to see anyone ever walking down a fairway, or we cut to way too many commercials, or we're not covering enough action. Why aren't we seeing Paul McBeth shoot well when he's on the 4th card and he's 9 down through 10 holes? Those gaps are starting to shrink. Now, we're never going to be able to cover every single hot score of the day. I can't say never. Likely not. I mean, if Calvin goes off at 8 a.m. and ends up shooting the hottest round of the day, there's not a guarantee that we got that footage just because of the sheer manpower and whatnot. Criticisms, I mean, let's face it, everybody has their favorite and not favorite commentator or commentator pair. And I'm right there in that conversation. Plenty of people hate listening to me, and cool. Good for them. I'm not perfect. Everybody has ways they can improve, and I think everybody has some strengths. And what I would say to the misconception is, well, one, I think live is more difficult than post, in my opinion. And I've done both. So I think live is a lot more difficult. 9 times out of 10 in post, you actually already know what's going to happen. You may or may not have seen it, but if you know there's a throw in on hole 9, you probably already knew about it before you sat down and commentated about it. Yeah, it's a learning curve for everybody, and I don't know if there's any other. I mean, we're just, I don't want to say we're just trying our best. That sounds kind of defeatist, but everybody's learning, everybody's pushing forward, and I guess one of the biggest misconceptions for me is just because you're really good at disc golf doesn't mean you're a natural commentator, and also someone who's not good at disc golf can be, I think, a great commentator. So I think it goes both ways, and way too many people don't realize that until sometimes it's too late, and you're like, oh, yeah, that doesn't sound good, or they don't know what they're doing. So those are some misconceptions that I think come to mind off the top of my head.
Yeah, I mean, commentary, and it's been the case with our podcast, with a lot of the chatter on social media. It really has come to the forefront, and I think that actually, as much as that speaks for people's maybe, what they feel about the commentary, I think it honestly speaks to how far the broadcast product has come aside from the commentary, because previously there would be more attention given to, oh, that camera was out of position, oh, there's, glitching going on, lag, that sort of thing, where now I think that product has gotten smooth enough, the switchers have gotten really good to where now the eyes are on the commentators a lot more. And I think that the Pro Tour they've done a good job as far as, I think that everybody on the commentary team is improving. I think that the Pro Tour seems to do a really good job with implementing feedback quickly. Talk about, just for you personally, what do you feel that the biggest challenges have been being in the commentary booth doing live disc golf? What is something that has been the most challenging for you?
I think one of the big, and maybe this feeds into the misconceptions, but we in fact have now really defined roles, and previously we didn't. And what I mean by that is, in the early days of Smashbox, well, first of all, it used to be just me out on the course, which had its own entire set of challenges. But now, when we're in a booth, and I think back to some days with a Dixon Jowers or a Robert McCall, we just kind of sat down and watched and commentated on the disc golf. Yeah. And now it's so much more, because we actually have someone in our ear telling us, hey, this shot's coming up, or we're going to cut to this, or hey, as soon as this putt is in, throw it to the commercials.
Right.
And so now we have these defined roles, and I think a lot of people don't realize we're generally going to have a host, which is often myself or Ian Anderson, and then a color analyst who could be Philo or Nate Doss or Valerie or Elaine or whomever that person is. And those are really the two roles. And I think a lot of people don't either understand that or kind of just get them mixed up as to who should be saying or doing what. Yeah. And it's like something that I say is generally going to have a certain path that it's coming from, as opposed to what something, one of our color analysts are saying. And that's been really unique and a little bit of a challenge. And some people would say, well, is there someone you like working with or dislike working with? And I'm just going to say, maybe I'm naive, but I like working with everybody. Like, I feel like I can sit down with almost any other person and I can potentially have a good show with them. And maybe I'm naive or silly or something, but I really enjoy it when I'm in there.
Yeah, I think that mentioning those roles, that is something that I think the Pro Tour has improved on a lot this year, because so many people don't realize, like you mentioned, how much of a production live broadcasts like those are, and the directing and the communication that really goes into them. It's absolutely insane. And then also, a lot of people just, because disc golf, like you had said, previously it was kind of just let's sit down, post-produce coverage, have a chat about what's going on the screen. It's very loose, not a lot of structure. Whereas the live broadcast, commentary it's a profession, it's an art. There's like you said, there's specific roles, and sticking to those roles is very crucial to the product because, not having the play-by-play and the color analysts, overlapping and knowing when each one should be talking, it creates a much smoother product. And that's something that I think has definitely improved this season, especially with the Pro Tour, is just having more defined and clear roles. And I think that week by week, everything has certainly been smoothing up. But one thing I was curious to know is, since you've now kind of settled into a role with the Pro Tour and you've kind of been in their rotation as a commentator pretty steadily, is that something that you feel like you could really see yourself settling into, being, one of the voices of disc golf? Like, do you look at yourself and think like, wow, if I could be the Jim Nance like CBS has, if I could be that for disc golf, like that would be really awesome for my career? Or is there other directions you really still want to explore?
That's funny enough. That's kind of a tough question in the sense that I love what I do on so many different levels and in so many different ways that I don't want to be, as of right now still, I don't want to be restricted to any one role. And what I mean by that is, as much as we're perfecting and have had plenty of technological challenges with the sideline reporting, I also feel like that's a valid role. And that's something that can be explored and used a little bit more and exploited or just worked on.
Yeah.
Also, one of my most gratifying moments throughout the last 12 years of the media role, or even longer than that when I helped with Disc Golf Planet, has been kind of those final moments, those crowning moments. Like, I think back, and it gives me chills just saying it actually, I think back to almost every major moment, at least stateside, that's happened in the last 12 years. I was either with a camera or with a microphone as it happened.
Yeah.
And that's, to me, I mean, I take that for granted because that's just the work that I've been doing, but it's been pretty incredible to see all of the world champions crowned, all of the US champions crowned, all these pro tours, national tours. And I like being on ground. I like I like being there as well. And so, I kind of get this funny remark out of Mo, our producer, who's like, I wish you were just really terrible at one or the other, because then we'd always, not have to put you there. But, it seems like they value me in the field doing, some of the sideline reporting, doing the champions interviews, and doing now the press conference as well. I kind of help lead those. So,
right.
And plus I love to travel. So,
sure, yeah.
To go sit in a studio about an event that's happening 200 or 2,000 miles away, I love doing it, but I also love the variety of then occasionally being on site.
Yeah. Well, and hopefully, and I don't know what the plans are, but maybe someday the commentary and everything will happen on site, and maybe that could be the best of both worlds.
Yeah, we experienced that at DDO this last year, where that was exactly it. I had the opportunity to sit in the booth with Nate and Val throughout the day, and then at night I could still get the latest gossip or stories or updates directly from the players, and then I feel like that helps make me a better commentator the next day, is when you do have those direct conversations, the night before at dinner. So
yeah, I think that everybody seemed to agree that the commentary at DDO was at another level because of what you just mentioned. There was so much more context. I mean, just being feet on the ground and even seeing the layout of the course in person is so helpful, and there was a huge difference in the amount of behind the scenes knowledge and just course knowledge, and it was very visible to everybody who was watching the coverage, and I think that was some of the feedback that I was certainly hearing about that.
Yeah, I'm fortunate again that I think for every single event in the last 5 years that I've commentated on, I've seen or visited or played or been at the course for I think every single event except for one. And having some of that's where the traveling comes in. Like, I can tell you when a shot goes to a certain spot on hole 6 at Maple Hill, I know if that's really a good spot to be in or not. Yeah. And that's because I've been there a number of times. So I feel like that makes me a more solid commentator and all-around asset to the broadcast.
Absolutely. And that kind of leads me into My next question, you're mentioning, like loving to be there for those big moments. Looking back over all the interviews and all the different commentary you've done and all those moments you've been a part of, what are some of the big ones that stand out to you, those moments that you got to be right there for? What are the ones that really stand out in your career?
I mean, it's incredibly timely with us having this conversation, here in the early part of June, that as the Portland Open is taking place, and in that time frame, the playoff with Ricky and Paul, in 2014, I was running around, capturing a bunch of stuff throughout the day. I did not make the semifinals that Saturday, which I was actually relieved to not make, so that I could then run around and get some more video footage. And it's kind of twofold, because I believe Katrina Allen had no other cameras on the final 9, and everybody was watching either the final 9 or the semifinals or whatever it was. And there was a bunch of people in my way, and I'm like, I'm gonna go capture the women. I don't think anyone's covering them anyway. And it's my footage, I believe, that might be the only footage of Katrina Allen winning the world championships. Mm-hmm. And just think if I hadn't walked over there, bothered to capture it, like it's. But then of course we were ready to go for the the final 9 wrapped up, and then the playoff began. And little, we really get into it. Someday there may be may relate to an NFT. I don't know, but I've never put together my world championship Paul Macbeth Ricky Wysocki playoff footage. I've never even.
Oh wow!
I've never even released it, because at the time McFly So High was on top of it, and he had it out, and I was like, all right, everyone's seen it, and someday. Maybe in the 10-year anniversary, I will dig it out, and I will actually put my version of it together.
Well, I tell you, that's a good one to have in your back pocket right there.
Yeah, it's just another perspective. So, that event, all the world championships, of course. I think about those final moments. Eric McCabe, Sarah Stanhope in 2010 when they won in Indiana. That was the first year I was ever blogging, and that was 2010. Just those really special moments. And I was called quite the softie when 2018 Paige Bjerkes tapped in, and Hannah Macbeth and I were doing the commentary a mile away over at Smugs in the rec center, but Paige Bjerkes was tapping in for her world title, and to see her mom and her dad on the bag, and to know I have 2 young daughters, and to know Paige, Bjerkes was 18 or 19 at the time. It was a really special moment that I couldn't contain myself in watching as well. So there's, and I've seen every one of Paul's wins. I've seen every one of Paige's wins, Ricky's wins, all right there in front of me. It's been incredible.
Yeah, it's certainly awesome. I'm gonna hold you to that 10-year anniversary playoff. That's crazy that you've got that footage, because McFly So High back in the day. Many people don't know his name at all, but I mean he was the guy back in the day. He had great commentary, or not commentary, great lack of commentary, but he had great coverage. And that's really, that's kind of the best view of that there is out there, and it's definitely solid. But I think that there's so many people who probably don't even realize. Don't even know about that world championship. And that was the first live disc golf that I think I ever watched. And I just remember just being so locked in. And I still think it's probably my favorite ending to a tournament that I've ever seen. So maybe what you have to do is try and get Paul to commentate over it.
That's for sure already the plan, is maybe even sit Paul and Ricky down. I'd like to think I'm friends with them enough that I mean, that's maybe a big ask, but I think for how iconic and historic that playoff was, and what it meant to both of their careers still. And you're right, Disc Golf Planet was there covering it live, and McFly So High was doing, kind of locked in officially as post. I was there as a player first, and as a media person second at the time. And I think it would be incredible to put my version of that together at some point. And 10 years makes sense, so maybe a couple years from now.
All right, well, I'll be looking forward to that. Another thing, along with the all the moments you've been able to experience, you've obviously been able to see so many different disc golf courses along with designing some yourself. So I think it would be only appropriate to get your top 5 courses that you've ever visited, if you can even condense it into that list.
Oh my gosh. I mean,
you don't need any particular order.
Yeah,
if
I was going to say
difficult.
there's some that are so obvious, and some that are personal for different reasons. I immediately think of the first time I traveled international for disc golf ever was to play in the 2008 Japan Open.
Oh wow!
And I went there in 2008 and in 2010, and so the views and the way we were treated. That definitely is definitely in that top 5. Nasu Shirabara Highlands in Japan, about 4 hours north of Tokyo. So I'd have to put temp course. I'd have to put that on there though. The views and everything was incredible. I'd have to say one of my favorites, and most people would be shocked maybe, is Sandy Point Resort. And that's in northern Wisconsin. My favorite tournament of the year is taking place as a team-based tournament. That's happening right around this time of year. And it's short, it's technical, it's very wooded, and it's a place that I went to when I was like 15 and then continued to go to for more than a decade or two, actually 2 decades. And it's a private facility. You can find them. Okay. I'll plug them. sandypt.com. You have to look it out. It's the world's first disc golf resort.
Oh, wow.
And so it's in the north. It's 10 minutes from where Adam Hammes grew up. So that's where he would go play as one of the courses. It's in northern Wisconsin. So absolutely beautiful. Milo McIver, how can you not have that on a list, along with everyone else? I mean, that property out there, absolutely gorgeous and amazing. There's some nostalgia to Santa Cruz, to De La Viega. Clearly not the necessarily the most technically, be
careful what you say about that course. You're gonna have a lot.
That's why I say I like
people take that very seriously.
And that's what I mean. Like, you wouldn't necessarily think of it, and maybe I'm unique or not unique. Maybe I just think of the history to that place, and that's what draws me into it. It's an iconic place to be.
That's fair.
Everybody loves Maple. Of course, being one of the best courses in the world is incredible. One of my favorites, and people are really going to blast me, to Colebrook Park in Michigan was played for the Worlds. It's been played a number of times. Most people hate it, and not hate. Hate's a strong word. Most people are like, it's this short, tiny, wooded course with too many trees. It's a lot like Sandy Point. So to me, like, that's a personal favorite. It's undergone a couple of changes throughout the years. But if I added up my winnings at Colebrook and at Sandy Point, I've probably won more money on those 2 courses than all the other courses in my life. So how can I not say, like, that's one of my favorites.
Yeah, it certainly creates some attachment, no doubt about that.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I have to know, Terry, and this has like always been a question I've had, is the button-down shirts.
Yeah.
I have to get to the bottom of the button-down shirts. You've always worn them, so much so that like the Pro Tour has fashioned you like your own, like they like stuck to the wardrobe. What is the story? Like, I need to know.
It's a little bit of let me back up a little and say, when I first started playing and I was 16, 17, 20, whatever, wearing a polo was a big deal to me. Like, it added a level of professionalism. Like, you weren't required to wear them, and I was all about the polo forever. I just felt it gave a more professional look. Most people were wearing T-shirts.
Yeah.
And that kind of continued to evolve. But then as I moved away from playing, I just kind of switched also to a button-up shirt, and I felt that there were some other patterns, and just it was a little even more professional look to it. And as I took on the media role, I liked how they look, and then it also, like, it just came into a factor of you could get them embroidered, you could get them screen printed, you could do whatever you wanted with them, and it became a comfortability thing. I also think, obviously being a larger, overweight guy, I felt like they fit and they wear on me better. So you put a polo on. Obviously, anyone in shape can pull off a polo. They can look great, as they should. I very much felt more comfortable in my own body, in my own skin, in wearing a button-up shirt. And so then that just became a staple of mine. And just in the last couple of years, I've gotten even more wild with the colors. I always used to kind of tone it down and be like, I don't want to be recognized or I don't want to stand out. Like, I'm a big enough guy. People see me. But now here I wear a nice bright pink shirt with turtles on it. And so I've just kind of owned it, I guess, is the long and short of it. I've just owned it. The easier solution would be just to lose a bunch of weight, which someday I'll get around to, hopefully. But when I went to the Pro Tour, I said, hey, the polos look great, but I don't feel comfortable in them. They just don't wear the same. And we actually, I think, wrote it into a sub clause of my contract. Like, hey, Terry will still pick out
clause.
Yeah, he will still pick out the shirts that he wears. Obviously, we look into the same color patterns, and then I get them embroidered and whatever. But yeah, that's that. Believe it or not, there's a lot of thought that's gone into this. I've had some pretty big fights over shirts throughout the years, and I stand my ground. So
well, I mean, you've created a brand at this point. It's become a part of your image, and I mean, I think the next step naturally is your own line of shirts. Like, when is that going to happen?
I did talk to somebody. There's someone within disc golf that was very receptive to the idea, or actually reached out to me about it. It's fizzled, and I think it needs to restart because
I agree.
There's a lot of guys that have reached out and said, hey, whether they're my size or smaller, they've said, hey, I like the look. So if you're in that industry of possibly custom made shirts, reach out to me, and I think we can find a good partnership. I want to find somebody within disc golf and make it part of their overall offerings.
Well, if you need somebody to market it and wear the prototypes, I will sign up. That would honestly make my entire year. So
all right.
Well, anyways, Terry, that's all I had for you. I really appreciate you joining the show. It's great hearing from you and all the things going on the Pro Tour, and I'm super happy to hear that things are going well. We certainly, I don't know if you noticed, but on our podcast, you're our number one commentator. You're currently one in the power rankings. So. Yes. You do have the top spot, so just keep up the good work. So,
all right, what are some of the things? And I have to ask questions now, but what are some of the
honestly,
things?
this is all I wanted is for you to ask me questions.
What are some of the things that you guys, and I know we always try to spare feelings to some degree, but what are some of the things you guys really like that you want to see more or hear more of? What kind of gets you guys going that you love within a broadcast?
Yes. So commentary-wise, number one thing that and this is the reason why you're number one in the power rankings, is you stick to your role of play-by-play, probably the best. That is super important. You don't have any overlap, so that's very key. Number two, most important thing that we really like, and this has a lot to do with the whoever is the on-course reporter, because that is like a role that has been experimented with a lot more this year, and something that we've taken notice to. And Nate Perkins and Brian Earhart, especially Brian Earhart, did an awesome job with that. Really good. I think that course context, this is probably like the biggest thing. Course context, so a shot about to land and a commentator being able to say, this is headed towards a good spot, or this is headed towards a bad spot. And then when it lands, being able to tell you exactly what they have from that spot because they know the course. That is huge, because golf, and it's easier in disc golf than it is in traditional golf to identify where a disc is going. But no matter what, you're always going to need to be clued in, because you can't perceive the disc if it's headed exactly towards that gap, or depending on the angle, is it going to hit that tree? So when a commentator can clue you in before the fact, that I think is huge. That's something that we really key in on. But honestly, as far as the commentary goes, really it's gotten a lot better. We've we've piped down a little bit because we used to get pretty fired up. There were certain things we get fired up about where whenever commentary felt a little bit too biased, we'd get a little fired up about that. Rooting for players, certainly. That really hasn't been a thing this year. The other one was the free advertising. That one. So commentators mentioning manufacturers, discs, when they're not being paid to do so. But that's really more of a business thing. That's really more of a Pro Tour thing than for us. But that's something we noticed too. That was very interesting. But yeah, I would say that a lot of the contextual stuff is the big thing. So like being able to give the listener stuff that they don't know, especially surrounding a shot that just happened or where a player is on the course. That like almost like positioning you in the player's shoes. That's the big thing for us.
Okay. No, I appreciate that. And I kind of want to go back almost to a couple other, I don't know if they're misconceptions or clarifications. One thing that people, I guess it's worth sharing, is that I used to call everything, and essentially I was making the call out to Johnny V, who was switching the show because he was the only other person. Now we have a slew, literally, of a half dozen people doing things. Yeah. And I would be like, oh, man, that shot looked great. Maybe we could take another look at it. And that was my audible cue for Johnny to do something. Or I would kind of throw to a commercial, and he'd have to react. Now everything's flipped on its head and in a much more standard operating procedure. In that, like I said earlier, Mo will say, "Hey, after this putt drops, we're gonna look at the scoreboard. Then we're gonna go to commercial." He's telling us those things, and that's for me to know. I'm steering that ship. I'm the host, and I only have one good ear, which I'm working on. Well, I'm trying to find solutions for, but I'm almost deaf in one ear. And B, people have no idea how difficult it is to have a conversation. Talking eloquently or insightfully about anything, and then somebody else is chiming into your ear. Wrap up this thought. After that, we're going to a Philo replay, and then we're gonna and then kick it to this this 2-minute clip. Like to have someone telling you that, and Mo and producers, that's what their job is, and you have to learn how to do it. But if you hear someone kind of lose their train of thought or someone blank out for a moment, which I've certainly done, somebody probably just told me something in my ear in the middle of a
right
while you were telling something. So that's something that I think is interesting for people to know. And then another thing I was going to say about that is there is always this slight delay that I know is being worked on, and it's an audio to video delay. It's money, it's technology. And that sometimes makes things feel like we're reacting in a weird way, and we're trying to find ways to mitigate that as well. So I feel like we know that's happening, and doing our best to work our way around that. So
certainly,
but yeah, it's the dynamic within me and another analyst. So much of that just comes, I think, with repetition, and then we're also seeing, and you guys are saying maybe that you're seeing people get better. I think that's because some of us are working really hard to absorb the legitimate feedback and to then apply it. I mean, I know Nate Doss, for instance, has made comments about some people that have been frustrated with what he's doing or has done, and he is very actively having conversations, and we're saying, hey, let's stop using this word. Let's stop overusing that phrase. Let's have some more breathing time when this kind of thing is happening. And those are all being applied. And I guess my other final thought to the commentary world is there's something like 5,300 religions. There's like umpteen thousand music genres. There's no way that any person or team of people can be a slam dunk home run hit for every single person that's listening. And I think people don't realize that. You think Joe Buck cares that there's 1,000 Facebook groups that say how much that people hate him? He's cashing his $5 million a year check on the way to, and laughing while cashing that check every day. So
Exactly.
I think people should realize that as well, is you may not hit for someone, but you might be just the right combo for other people. There's commentary in teams that I don't care for, but that just means they're not my cup of tea.
Yeah, I think the key is, and like you said, kind of getting the science of the commentary down, the basics, sort of the fundamentals of commentary as far as, just what you do. And then there's the factor of personality. Commentators are going to have a personality, and some people just aren't going to like that. But I think you do shrink the margins of negative feedback once you get down to, okay, the commentary is being done correctly, at least by the industry standard. It's just whether or not you like that commentator or not. And I definitely agree that the Pro Tour has always been a company that applies feedback and takes it quickly and directly, more so than a lot of other disc golf entities that I've seen. So that's something that they can be applauded for. But yeah, I think that the product is certainly headed in the right direction, and I think there's plenty of talented people that are capable.
Yeah, and I and of course that extrapolates out into things like podcasts. Somebody enjoys one podcast or one style, they may not like another. I mean, that can be just said of every single thing, where there's now, the cool thing is there's all these opportunities. You don't like this style of podcast by a certain person or host or team. Guess what? There's 2 or 3 or 5 other ones that you might align with, that you do enjoy. And I think that's something that's really cool and a unique opportunity in disc golf that wasn't here 6, 8, 10 years ago. But now
Certainly.
there's actually, the opportunities for those things. Anybody just has to go out and do the work.
Definitely.
Well, thank you guys. I mean, you guys have obviously, both yourself, just the entire foundation network in everything that you guys have done. I think you guys saw an opportunity and then applied your passion and your skills. And it's been awesome to see just yet another success story, I feel like, where people can go out and follow these thoughts or ideas and go at it differently and have this incredible support network and these followers and these fans, and you guys are an absolute testament to that. And I think that's been really awesome to see. So,
well, that's certainly high praise coming from you. So we really appreciate that.
Well, keep at all the work, and if you guys ever need me for anything, I know you guys graciously jumped in and then did post-production commentary for the event we covered last year, and I really appreciate that. But if there's anything you guys ever need from me, don't hesitate to reach out.
Awesome, Terry. Well, thank you so much for hopping on the show.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, and thanks once again to Terry for joining the show. It was really good to hear from him on his perspective, being on the other side of the commentary situation, being in the booth, actually having to, be a part of that product. I think it was just an awesome perspective to have, and it was really great having him on as a guest. Make sure you're here next Thursday. We're going to have another great interview. You don't want to miss it. We'll see you then.